Let's get to it. Number 10. The Quimbaya Airplanes, Colombia. Deep in the high-security vaults of the Gold Museum in Bogota, amidst thousands of standard religious trinkets depicting frogs, lizards, and insects, sits a small, disturbing collection of anomalies that simply shouldn't exist. These golden artifacts, crafted by the Quimbaya civilization roughly 1,000 years ago, were originally cataloged by archaeologists as zoomorphic figures, stylized representations of birds or insects native to the region. But look closer. Since when does a bird have rigid triangular wings located at the bottom of its body? Since when does an insect possess a vertical tail fin with a rudder or a fuselage that looks suspiciously like a cockpit? This is where the biology ends and the engineering begins. In 1994, German aeronautical engineers Peter Belting and Konrad Lubbers decided to put these ancient designs to the ultimate test. They didn't just look at them, they built large-scale radio-controlled replicas exact in every aerodynamic detail to the golden originals. The result was terrifyingly conclusive. The models didn't just glide, they flew with the stability and maneuverability of modern supersonic jets. They possessed classic delta wing configurations and vertical stabilizers, features that wouldn't be understood by human engineers until the jet age of the 1940s. The center of gravity was perfect, the lift-to-drag ratio was perfect. Skeptics will scream that these are just artistic interpretations of plecostomus fish or local moths. But last time I checked, fish don't need vertical stabilizers to prevent tailspins at high altitudes, and moths don't have fuselages. The Quimbaya artifacts suggest that someone in the Colombian rainforest saw something thunder across the sky a millennium ago, something they could only replicate in gold. But if you think powered flight was limited to South America, you need to see what they were hiding in an Egyptian tomb. Number 9. The Saqqara Bird, Egypt. In 1898, a French expedition excavating the tomb of Pa di Imen in Saqqara unearthed a small wooden object labeled simply as bird object. It was thrown into a dusty box in the Cairo Museum and forgotten for 70 years, dismissed as a child's toy. It wasn't until 1969 that Dr. Khalil Messiah, who just happened to be a model plane enthusiast, noticed something odd about this bird. It didn't have legs. It didn't have painted feathers. What it had was a set of wings with a distinct reverse diedral angle, a sophisticated aerodynamic design used to create immense lift. This isn't a toy, it's a blueprint. Tests conducted in wind tunnels at the University of Liverpool have shown that the Saqqara bird is perfectly capable of flight. It demonstrates an understanding of the principles of aviation that supposedly wouldn't be discovered for another 2,000 years. The airfoil shape of the wing is identical to modern gliders. The only thing missing is a rear horizontal tailplane, though the artifact shows clear evidence of a breakage point where such a stabilizer would have been attached. When a simple balsa wood stabilizer was added during testing, the bird became a highly efficient glider, capable of carrying heavy loads relative to its size. Mainstream Egyptologists insist this was a weather vane or a ceremonial object meant to catch the wind. But why would a civilization obsessed with the afterlife and the gods create a mathematically perfect scale model of a glider? It suggests they were trying to emulate the boats of the sky described in their texts. And if they had the gliders, the next artifact on our list suggests they might have seen the heavy machinery required to tow them. Number 8. The helicopter hieroglyphs at Abydos, Egypt. High up on a lintel in the temple of Seti I at Abydos, there is a carving that has caused more arguments in the archaeological community than perhaps any other image on Earth. This temple was built to honor Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and the inscriptions were meant to be eternal truths. When the plaster covering the lintel crumbled away, it revealed a row of hieroglyphs that looked jarringly, impossibly modern. You don't need a degree in Egyptology to interpret them. You need a subscription to Jane's Defense Weekly. There, etched into the stone, are 3 distinct shapes. One is unmistakably a helicopter, complete with a rotor blade and tail shaft. Beside it sits what appears to be a submarine or a tank with a turret and gun barrel. Below that, a sleek, jet-like aircraft. These aren't abstract shapes. They are silhouettes of 20th century warfare. The resemblance is so precise that it forces us to ask if the ancient scribes were recording a vision of the future or a memory of the past. It looks like a catalog of military hardware carved into the ceiling of a holy site. The standard explanation is the palimpsest theory, the idea that Pharaoh Ramesses II plastered over Seti I's original titles, and over time the plaster fell off, creating an optical illusion where two sets of names combined to form these shapes. It's a convenient explanation and mathematically possible, but the odds of random erosion creating a perfect Apache helicopter, a tank, and a jet all in the same square foot of stone are astronomical. It looks less like a typo and more like a technical manual. But machines need power, and that brings us to a crypt beneath the sands of Dendera. Number 7. The Dendera Light Bulb, Egypt. Deep beneath the Temple of Hathor lies a narrow, claustrophobic crypt that was never meant to be seen by the public. Inside, etched into the limestone walls, are relief carvings that look like they belong in a physics textbook rather than a house of worship. The figures are holding massive, transparent, bulb-shaped objects. Inside these bulbs, a wavy snake snakes its way from a lotus flower socket, looking exactly like a wire filament. The bulbs are supported by jed pillars, symbols of stability that look suspiciously like high-voltage insulators, and the entire apparatus is connected to cables to a box that the figures are guarding. This is the Dendera Light. To an electrical engineer, this is a Crookes tube, an early version of a cathode ray tube used to generate X-rays and light. The snake is the discharge beam, the lotus is the cable socket, and the jed pillar is the insulator. If you build a model based on these dimensions, as Austrian engineer Walter Garn did, it actually works. It lights up. The Egyptians theoretically had the glass-blowing skills and the gold for conductivity to make this happen. Here is where we have to choose a side, and I want you to fight it out in the comments right now. Is this just a symbolic depiction of the ancient Egyptian creation myth with a snake emerging from a lotus flower? Or is Team Ancient Tech right that this is a schematic for electric lighting used to illuminate the pitch-black tombs where no soot from torches has ever been found? Pause the video, go to the comments, and type myth or tech. I want to see who wins, because if they had power, they might have had pilots, like the one buried in Palenque. Number 6. The sarcophagus lid of King Pakal, Maya. In 1952, deep within the Temple of Inscriptions in Palenque, Mexico, archaeologist Alberto Ruz Luyer discovered the tomb of the great Mayan ruler, King Pakal. The lid of his sarcophagus is one of the most complex and beautiful carvings in the ancient world. But when Eric von Däniken looked at it in the 1960s, he didn't see a king falling into the underworld. He saw a man in a cockpit. Rotate the image from vertical to horizontal, and the religious symbolism evaporates. Pakal is sitting in a reclining chair, exactly like a modern astronaut during liftoff to mitigate G-forces. His hands are manipulating knobs and controls. His feet are on pedals. There is a breathing apparatus connected to his nose. And behind him, a complex machinery unit spewing what looks undeniably like flames and exhaust smoke. The layout matches the ergonomic design of the Mercury and Gemini capsules almost perfectly. Mainstream scholars argue this is a depiction of the world tree and the white-boned snake, symbolizing Pakal's descent into Xibalba, the Mayan underworld. They say the flames are the roots of the tree. But why does the world tree have exhaust pipes? Why does the king need to manipulate gears to fall into death? It looks less like a spiritual journey and more like a tactical launch. And if Pakal was imitating the gods, maybe we need to look at what those gods actually looked like. And they weren't human. Number 5. The Ubaid Lizard Men, Sumeria. Before the Sumerians built the first great cities, the Ubaid culture thrived in Mesopotamia roughly 7,000 years ago. When archaeologists excavated their grave sites at Tel al-Ubaid, they found something disturbing. Among the pottery and tools were clay figurines representing their gods or elites. But these weren't humans. They were humanoids with the unmistakable heads of reptiles. These lizard men have elongated heads, almond-shaped slit eyes, and broad shoulders. They are often depicted wearing what looks like space padding or armor. The chilling detail is a figurine of a female lizard being breastfeeding a lizard infant. This isn't a mask. This isn't a shaman wearing a costume. You don't breastfeed a child in a ceremonial mask. This implies a biological species, a family unit. Why would the very first civilized humans worship gecko people? The ancient Sumerian texts speak of the Anunnaki, the star travelers who came from the sky to bring knowledge. Is it possible that the Ubaid people were simply sculpting what they saw, a non-human race that walked among them? If these beings were real and they came from the stars, they must have crashed occasionally. And according to a controversial find in China, one of them left a black box. Number 4. The Bayan-Har stones, the Dropa stones. This is one of the most contested stories in archaeology, so buckle up. In 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Chi Pu-Te was exploring caves in the Bayan-Har Mountains on the border of Tibet. Inside, he found neat rows of graves containing small skeletons with disproportionately large heads. Buried with them were 716 granite discs looking like stone vinyl records, each with a hole in the center. Under a microscope, these discs reportedly revealed tiny, spiraling hieroglyphs. It took 20 years for a researcher named Sum Nui to decipher them. The translation was so explosive, the Beijing Academy of Prehistory forbade him from publishing it. It told the story of the Dropa, a spacecraft that crashed 12,000 years ago. The beings couldn't repair their craft and were hunted by the local tribes. The stones were their record. Here is your second tribal trigger moment. Skeptics claimed Sum Nui never existed, and the stones are a hoax created by a Soviet magazine to stir up mystery. Believers say the stones were confiscated and the scientist was erased from history to hide the truth. Which narrative do you buy? Is this the Roswell of the East or a 1960s creative writing project? Tell me below, hoax or history? Because if you think rock art can't depict aliens, you haven't seen what they painted in the Australian outback. Number 3. The Wandjina Sky Beings, Australia. In the remote Kimberley region of Australia, indigenous rock art galleries dating back 4,000 years depict the Wandjina, the supreme creator spirits. But the Wandjina don't look like the kangaroo or emu hunters who painted them. They are depicted as bulbous, white-skinned figures with massive black wraparound eyes. They have no hair, and most terrifyingly, they have no mouths. The Aboriginal elders say the Wandjina didn't need mouths because they were so powerful that if they spoke, the rain would never stop. They communicated telepathically. Around their heads are strange halos or helmets emitting lines of light. The stories say they came from the Milky Way, created the land, and then went back into the sky or into the earth. Compare a Wandjina painting to a police sketch of a modern gray alien reported by abductees. The resemblance is 1-to-1. The large head, the black eyes, the lack of a mouth. Were the Aboriginal artists employing a specific abstract style, or were they documenting the arrival of visitors in pressure suits? And speaking of seeing things from high above, how do you explain a map that shows a continent before it was discovered? Number 2. The Piri Reis Map, Ottoman Empire. In 1929, the Piri Reis map was discovered in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. Painted on gazelle skin in 1513 by a Turkish admiral, it is a compilation of older source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. It shows the western coast of Africa and eastern coast of South America with impressive accuracy. But if you follow the coast of South America down, it connects to a landmass at the bottom that looks exactly like the coastline of Antarctica. Here is the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1818, over 300 years later. But it gets worse. The map shows the coastline of Queen Maud Land without its ice cap. We only know what that coastline looks like today thanks to seismic surveys and satellite radar penetrating the mile-thick ice. The last time Queen Maud Land was free of ice was at least 6,000 years ago. This implies that Piri Reis had access to source maps created by a civilization that surveyed the planet during the pre-Ice Age era. And to map a continent that accurately, you need aerial capabilities. You need to see it from the sky. It suggests a lost epoch of human or non-human history where global survey technology existed. But if they could fly, what were they wearing? The answer might be in prehistoric Japan. Number 1. The Dogu figurines, prehistoric Japan. We have arrived at the payoff. If you want the smoking gun, look at the Jomon period of Japan, roughly 10,000 to 400 BC. This was a hunter-gatherer society, living in pit houses and using stone tools. Yet they produced thousands of Dogu figurines that defy all logical explanation. While most ancient fertility statues are nude, fleshy figures, the Dogu are heavily armored. Look at the Shakoki Dogu type. The figure is wearing a helmet with large, bug-eyed lenses, literally goggles to block out light. The neck is protected by a thick collar with rivets. The body is encased in a suit with distinct tubing, valves, and connectors running across the chest and back. The hands and feet don't have fingers or toes. They end in sealed clamps or boots. NASA engineers have looked at these. They don't see a goddess. They see a pressurized extravehicular activity suit. The goggles protect against solar glare. The filters filter the atmosphere. The suit maintains pressure. Why would a Stone Age artist with technology limited to clay and arrows dream up a spacesuit down to the rivets? Unless they weren't dreaming, unless they were modeling the gods who walked out of the craft, unable to breathe our air, encased in technology that looked like magic. We aren't done yet. In fact, we are just getting started. Because while the other 9 items on this list are physical crumbs, a map here, a statue there, India offers us something far more terrifying. They didn't just leave us a statue, they left us the technical manual and the flight logs. To understand this, we have to go back to July 16, 1945, the Trinity test, New Mexico, the moment J. Robert Oppenheimer watched the first atomic bomb detonate, famously quoting the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." But there is a second quote from Oppenheimer that history classes conveniently forget. 7 years later, at the University of Rochester, a student asked him, "Was the bomb exploded at Alamogordo the first one to be detonated?" Oppenheimer paused, looked at the student, and replied, "Well, yes, in modern times." Oppenheimer was a student of Sanskrit. He knew exactly what he was saying. He knew that the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, texts written thousands of years ago, don't just describe gods fighting. They describe in agonizing clinical detail a technological war that destroyed the previous age of man. Let's look at the machines. The texts describe vimanas, flying palaces, but these aren't magic carpets. The Vaimanika Shastra, a text rediscovered in the early 20th century, functions like an engineering schematic. It describes different classes of aircraft: the Rukma Vimana, the Sundara Vimana, the Tripura Vimana. It details 31 parts of the craft, including the pilot's clothing, which must be fire-resistant. It describes the propulsion system. Strong and durable must the body of the Vimana be made, like a great flying bird of light material. Inside, one must put the Mercury engine with its heating apparatus underneath. By the means of the power latent in the Mercury, which sets the driving whirlwind in motion, a man sitting inside may travel a great distance in the sky. Mercury vortex engines, rotating magnets. In the 1970s, NASA engineers studied the concept of mercury ion engines. They found it theoretically sound, but incredibly toxic. Yet here is a text from antiquity describing it as standard hardware. The texts even detailed the invisibility cloak of the Vimana, using mirrors and light manipulation to hide from enemy craft. This is stealth technology. But it gets darker. If they had the planes, they had the bombs. The Mahabharata describes a weapon called the Agneya weapon. Listen to this description and tell me if it sounds like a bow and arrow. A single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as the thousand suns rose in all its splendor. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death that reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and the Andakas. It goes on. This is where it gets chillingly specific to radiation sickness. It says that after the weapon was used, the corpses were so burned they were unrecognizable. The hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without any apparent cause. Food became poisoned. The soldiers who survived threw themselves into the streams to wash away the poison dust from their armor. That is not a metaphor. That is acute radiation poisoning. Hair and nails falling out is a symptom that didn't exist in the ancient world's medical lexicon until 1945. And we have the physical scar to prove it. In Pakistan, we find the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, the mound of the dead. This city was destroyed instantly, roughly 3,700 years ago. When archaeologists excavated it, they found 44 skeletons scattered in the streets, sprawling as if struck down in a single moment, fathers holding the hands of children. No signs of sword wounds, no signs of scavenging animals. Even the flies wouldn't touch the bodies. When scientists analyzed these bones, they found them to be among the most radioactive ever found, on par with the bodies found in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the surrounding area, the sand has been fused into green glass, vitrified rock. This creates a substance known as trinitite, which only forms under temperatures in excess of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, the kind of heat you only get from a nuclear detonation. So the twist isn't that aliens visited us. The twist is that we are living in a post-apocalyptic world. We are the children of the survivors, crawling out of the bunkers, reinventing the wheel, and slowly building our way back up to the technology that destroyed our ancestors. The Vimanas, the Dogu suits, the maps, they aren't magic. They're the debris of a civilization that flew too close to the sun and got burned. This brings us to the uncomfortable truth. If history is written by the victors, then prehistory is written by the survivors who forgot everything. We look at these artifacts, the gold jets, the impossible maps, the radioactive skeletons, and we label them anomalies. We put them in glass cases and call them religious art because the alternative is too terrifying to admit. The alternative is that we are not the first advanced species to walk this earth. We are just the latest. And if they were here, watching us, guiding us, or maybe even creating us, the silence of the last few thousand years doesn't mean they left. It just means they're waiting. Here at Oddly Explained, we don't accept the official narrative just because it's in a textbook. We dig in the dirt. We read the forbidden footnotes. We connect the dots that mainstream science is too afraid to touch. If you felt that spark, that feeling that the world is bigger, stranger, and more mysterious than you were told in school, then you're already one of us. But don't just be a spectator. This channel is an initiation. I want you to click that subscribe button, not to help the algorithm, but to help yourself stay awake. Turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when we decode the next piece of the puzzle. Keep asking questions, even the dangerous ones. Class dismissed.